Ricky Baker.
He is a bad egg, a youth court regular.
We're hoping that this change of scene will help straighten him out.
You hungry? That's a silly question, isn't it? Look at you. This is Heck. You can call him Uncle if you like.
No, I can't.
You ever been up in that jungle before?
There's about 1 million hectares of it, buddy. It's easy to get lost.
I'm amazed how lost you got.
You little bastard! We got no choice but to camp out here for a few weeks.
Where are you, Ricky Baker?
More on this massive national manhunt.
Faulkner is Caucasian. Well, they got that wrong because you're obviously white.
Sam Neill, good morning. Thanks for joining breakfast.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Hunt for the Wilder People. You play Heck, a gruff, very gruff mountain man. I have to say, having seen the film, you do gruff very well. Will you take that as a compliment?
Well, Taika, the director, says I have a deep well of grumpiness that I can draw on. I was a bit distressed, actually, because the character's called Heck. And then in The Listener, which is the main sort of broadcasting magazine in New Zealand, I said, I've known a lot of Hecks in my time. I still know a lot of Hecks. They're around, they live in the bush. But somehow my accent, or the accent of the guy that was interviewing me, said, Sam Neill knows a lot of Hicks. And the Hicks are everywhere in New Zealand. That's not what I meant at all. Heck is not a Heck. I do know people like that, and indeed I've got a couple of friends who are very like Heck. I don't think Heck is me.
Yeah, I'm surely not. Now, Heck's quiet, gruff world is interrupted with the arrival of Ricky, played terrifically by Julian Dennison. To cut a long story short, it ends up in a bit of a chase adventure, and it's fair to say, isn't it, Sam, that Heck and Ricky grow on each other in the wilderness of New Zealand?
Yes, there's a sort of an accommodation that we come to. Yeah, but it ends up being something of a caper, I suppose. It kind of references films of the 80s that were kind of a bit more fun than a lot of things that are out now. And specifically some New Zealand films. 1 or 2 of those I was in. So I'm kind of like a relic of the past in a contemporary New Zealand film.
I was trying to tell you it was like the Lord of the Rings.
Do you like making those sorts of films? The uplifting, good story type films?
Well, this was Taika's ambition in making this film. He wanted to make a film that people will leave the cinema feeling a bit better about themselves, feeling a bit better about the world, and pure entertainment. So there's nothing shameful about making films that are just entertaining. But I think it's actually more than that. I think while it's a very funny film, I don't think it's a comedy, and there are notes of kind of sadness and poignancy through it. But finally, it's a film that kind of has good feels. That's what people say on Twitter.
Yeah.
I came up with good feels.
Never stop running.
Yeah, and I'll never stop chasing you. I'm relentless. I'm like the Terminator.
I'm more like Terminator than you.
I said at first you're more like Sarah Connor in the first movie too, before she could do chin-ups.
Julian Dennison, how good is he as a young actor? He's certainly got a lot of promise, hasn't he?
He's very remarkable, but also just such a great kid. And we became friends from day one, and we're friends to this day. And we hung out, you know, for the entire shoot and the rehearsals and everything. And I realised on day one, I liked him a lot. I thought it was like a meeting of minds where I'm kind of not very grown up myself. So there was 2, 12-year-olds in that truck.
One big kid, one small kid.
Yeah.
Now, Sam, you're, of course, a global movie superstar, but do you...
Tone it down.
Well, I'll say it even if you
won't. A
won't.
little bit international and sort of minor star.
But you've made films in Hollywood, of course, lots in Australia, but you enjoy going back to your homeland and making films with terrific New Zealand directors and great New Zealand actors?
Yes, I probably work more in Australia, as a matter of fact. Australia's been very, very good to me. I love working here as well, and I've got a lot of friends here, a lot of friends in the film industry. I don't go back to New Zealand as much, so this was a kind of unique opportunity to work. I mean, I've got my vineyards there, but obviously the film industry is much smaller there. But I've been working in this country since 1979 on a regular basis, and working here is very similar to working in New Zealand, I think. There's no hierarchy on the set. You know, there's no difference between the cast and the crew. People just get on, and I like that. Nobody gets called sir. Although, I quite like being called sir once in a while. You get that in England. You can call me sir if you like, Michael.
So Sam Neill, I have to say. It's got a lovely ring to it.
It has a ring, yes.
Hey, I've read a couple of interviews with that you've given where you've talked about how you're not too happy about the cringe factor in New Zealand about anything to do with Australia and Australians.
Yes.
Do you think that's a big problem?
I think it's kind of works both ways, you know, and I hope that Australians will go and see this film because there's a kind of reluctance for Australians to see New Zealand stuff and vice versa, and I don't quite understand that. But I think we have a tremendous amount in common, and common heritage, and we sort of like each other. I like you, Michael. You're Australian.
Sam.
Thank you very
I
much.
like you a lot. Hey, you mentioned you started here in Australia in 1979. You've got an acting career that spans close to 40 years all up. I've gone through your list of films and TV shows. The films, at least 70 films, over 40 years. I'm sure you've lost count. You obviously get lots of scripts. How do you go about choosing what scripts to say yes to, what films to shoot, and rejecting those you don't want to do?
Well, people often accuse me of being the hardest working actor that they know. Actually, I'm incredibly lazy, but I hate being out of work. Well, most people do. So sometimes, if things are a bit dry, I will actually... OK, I'll do that, and I probably shouldn't have. But if...
Do you want to nominate any films in that category?
Well, for instance, I got a lot of flack. I did a film for FIFA a couple of years ago, and it was about the time that Sepp Blatter was going into meltdown mode. So it probably wasn't, the timing wasn't immaculate. But I have to say, I had such a good time on that film. I have no regrets about it at all. But people say, why did they choose that particular course? But you don't really have that much control over your career as an actor. It's pretty random.
Yeah. Sam Neill, or Sir Sam Neill, as we'll now dub you. Thanks very much for joining Breakfast.
Thank you so much, Michael.
We're offering $10,000 to anyone who can capture them, dead or alive. Alive. They should be alive.
Ricky! When they ask who did this, tell them it was the Wilder people.
The what of people?